Most people understandably do not enjoy suffering, and despite what the well-meaning but misunderstanding support people in our lives tell us, we are typically not intentionally spending all day wallowing in our own sorrow. Unfortunately, the world that we live in is generally pretty unsympathetic and impatient with regard to emotional pain. And that tends to create an inner sense of urgency to not only get better, but to get better as quickly as possible. Lots of companies have picked up on this, and if you get on any social media platform, which I guess you are right now since you're watching this, you may be bombarded with quick fixes for your life and your mood and your mental health and 4-week programs and things that are going to turn your life around super quickly. And it's all one big giant mess of scams and lies. Because unfortunately, changing how you think and how you feel and how you live is not an easy task. And just as with any difficult task, it usually takes quite a long time for real, sustainable change to occur. So as annoying as it is to hear, and I promise, I hate saying this just as much as you hate hearing it, because I myself am a very impatient, results-driven person. Patience is a key factor in mental health recovery. And if your attempts to get better so far have lacked patience, that may in fact be the reason that your efforts have not paid off and you have not gotten where you want to be. So as an impatient person who needs to remind himself every single day of why it's important to pace yourself and go at some certain speed and wait a little bit before you evaluate the outcomes of your actions. I'm going to share with you today 4 reminders that I give myself every day to help me stay patient in my own mental health journey. And obviously, I'm going to explain my rationale for these too. The first is that the only change worth making is a change that you can stick with indefinitely. Temporary changes produce only temporary results. And a pattern that I see people fall into frequently is making a really dramatic, really intense lifestyle change. Think New Year's resolution type changes, but throughout the year, probably knowing or at least anticipating that this is something they're only going to be able to do for a little bit of time. So think like really intense diets, crazy workout routines, signing up for a bunch of like groups or clubs if you're kind of an introvert or a socially anxious person, like just totally flipping the script on your life and just doing something dramatically different than what you're doing right now. These types of changes have about a 99% failure rate. You can usually do them for a short period of time because you're using willpower to get yourself to do this thing that is really against your current kind of lifestyle and general pattern. So you have to exert a lot of willpower to make this change because it's not a self-sustaining behavior yet. A behavior becomes self-sustaining when the reward you get from engaging in the behavior outpaces the effort you have to put into the behavior. And the more different that behavior is from the way you are currently living, the longer it takes for those lines to cross and for it to feel worth it. Once those lines cross and a behavior feels worth it, you will naturally want to continue the behavior. So if you set the bar low and say, I'm just going to make this small change, because it doesn't require that much of you, it also doesn't have to create a super dramatic change in your life for it to feel worth it and for you to want to continue the behavior. And so that is why making smaller changes is actually usually the fastest way that you can see any real change in your life, because those are the only ones that will last. Do it in increments and do it in a way that you think, I could do this for the rest of my life. I could do this every day or every week or whatever it is for as long as I have left, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Those are the changes that will stick, and only changes that stick produce any real outcomes, produce any real difference in your mental health. The second thing I remind myself of is that change is gradual and indirect rather than rapid and direct. I think what happens a lot of time, and again, partially because of some of the marketing and advertising I referenced earlier, is people expect to feel a lot better really quickly. And when that is not their experience with changing something in their lives, they tend to conclude, well, that didn't work because it didn't produce the outcome I was hoping for, and therefore I should stop doing it. So let's say that you've heard physical activity is good for your mental health, which it absolutely is, 100% true. And you're currently not a very physically active person, so you decide to start taking a 10-minute walk every day. And the first 3 days you do that, you have average to above average days. And you think, aha, this maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe this is a thing I should stick with. And in your fourth day of going for a walk, you have a really crappy day. And because you put forth the effort to do the thing that you're not currently in the habit of doing, that doesn't come naturally to you, and that still takes a little bit out of you, and your result was a below average day, you correlate those two things and you think, this means walking does not work for me. Walking is an ineffective tool for my mental health. I should scrap it and I should do something else instead. That is a mistake, because doing something that's good for your mental health and having a bad day, unfortunately, are not mutually exclusive. Your life really is like a series of inputs and outputs. There are so many factors that go into whether you have a good day, an average day, or a bad day. And the sad truth is, you can do, within reason, everything right on any given day, and sometimes you're still going to have a bad day. Like, I'm not trying to be morbid or pessimistic here, but if you have the world's most perfectly optimized mental health routine and someone you love dies, or you lose your job, or you get in a car accident that's going to be really expensive to repair, you're going to have a bad day. There's nothing you could have done to prevent that. There's no way that was going to be a good day or even an average day. Obviously, those are extreme examples, but there are much smaller scale examples too. There are things that happen out of our control that affect how we feel and affect how we function. And so you can't just, well, you can, and many of us do, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't just discard something because it didn't prevent you from having a bad day. That doesn't mean that it isn't working. All of the things that I talk about on this channel, and if you're in therapy, the kind of things you talk about with your therapist, the kinds of things you read in self-help books, it's not like they're guarantees that everything's going to be awesome all the time. What they do is they raise your average. They raise your average mood, they raise the average quality of your day, but there are still going to be fluctuations above and below that average. And that will always be true because life is a crazy, chaotic, unpredictable thing. The best that you can do, and the best that anyone is out there doing, no one has the secret. No one's got this figured out. Every single person is just out there playing the odds. They're doing everything that they can think of or know of, or everything that's in their power, to give themselves the best chance of having a good day and feeling happy and enjoying their life. But there's no guarantees for any of us. Well, I mean, the guarantee is that it won't always work. So try not to get discouraged when your early efforts at change don't produce rapid, dramatic results. They aren't intended to. They don't work that way. That doesn't mean that they aren't working for you. The third thing I try to remind myself to help me stay patient in my mental health journey is that you build momentum over time as you make changes, and every change that you can successfully make and stick with will actually make all of the other changes down the road easier. So when people's lives are in a really desperate place and they feel like very little is going right and there's like 50 things they want to change, that's often part of where this sense of urgency comes from. Like, it's going to take so long. Like, if the first change I make in my life takes me 3 months, then so it's going to take me, what, 15 years to like really get where I want to be? Not necessarily. In fact, almost certainly not. Because every change that you make, your brain gets healthier, your brain gets more efficient, and you get better at making the changes down the road. So to give you an example, sleep. And I know, shocking that I would talk about sleep, right? If you are currently struggling with sleep, maybe you have insomnia, interrupted sleep, hypersomnia, just no schedule, and you get your sleep in a pretty good place. You're getting 7 to 8 hours of good sleep, good quality sleep. You're not like chugging caffeine or drinking a lot of alcohol close to bed, at about the same time every night, and you can stick with that for a while. Your brain becomes healthier. It works more quickly, it regulates your emotions better, it engages with other people better, and all of those changes that your improvements in sleep produces will make every other change easier because you now have a stronger, healthier brain through which to attempt those changes. And so when you're in that really beginning phase and you're looking forward at what looks like it's going to be a literally endless journey, and you cannot imagine how you're ever going to feel like you've gotten anywhere. I'm stealing this metaphor from my financial advisor, but it's a little bit like pushing a snowball uphill. At the beginning, it's just this incredible effort. It's so hard to move it even an inch. It feels like it's never going to end. And at some point, you get the snowball up to the top of the hill. And then you're pushing it on flat ground, and then it feels a little bit easier. And at some point, that snowball starts rolling downhill, and you're just trying to keep up with it. I'm telling you, if you can make and stick with 3 or 4 really significant, healthy changes in your life, you will build up so much momentum that you will have a hard time not continuing down that path, because you'll start to feel and see and experience the reward, and other people will see it too. You'll be happier, your mood will be better, your life will be better, your relationships will be better, and you'll probably think, I want to keep this going. This is working. Finally, for the first time in my life, I am getting somewhere, and I want to keep that going. You're not going to want to stop. And it gets faster and easier every time. So your initial estimate of how much time it's going to take for you to really get where you want tends to be very skewed, because the person you are when you start is not the same person you will be when you're making change number 4 or number 7 or number 10. And the last thing that I try to keep in the forefront of my mind to help me be patient in my mental health journey is that constantly changing your focus out of frustration prevents you from building the mastery necessary for anything to really work. So almost every life change or coping skill that we talk about on here and wherever else you receive, mental health advice or services, they are just that. They are skills. And as with any skill, you get better at them the more you use them. So what I see people fall into often is they'll focus really hard on nutrition for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And again, kind of looping into some of the other stuff we talked about here, it doesn't change that much. And so they abandon nutrition and they're on to the next new thing, because they're looking for that one thing that's going to work, that's going to be really powerful and easy and quick. And so they keep switching what they're trying to do to look for that thing that's going to make that really big impact. And the truth is, at least in my life and in the lives of the clients I've worked with in therapy and in coaching, all of those things can work. But the only way they get to the point where they work quickly and they're powerful and they're easy to use is when you've been doing them for a long time and you have built up your skill level. I mean, it's just like anything else. Cheesy example, but the first time you rode a bike, it probably didn't do a whole lot for you. It was probably really frustrating and really unenjoyable, and it probably really hurt a lot because you fell. But when you get to the point where you can just stay on that bike basically forever unless you hit a rock or something, then it starts to be something you actually enjoy. That's true of all therapy skills. That's true of all healthy coping skills. That's true of all positive lifestyle change. You get better at it, and it becomes easier. And those two variables, when they start to move in that direction, that's when that thing becomes a really powerful resource. The first week that I started going to the gym, I did not feel better about myself. I probably actually felt worse about myself because I was around a bunch of fit dudes all the time, and I was physically exhausted and hurting and feeling like I didn't know what I was doing. It took a while for that to become something where I felt like I was good enough at it that it actually benefited me. And every single thing is like that. When you're constantly switching it up and trying to find that magic bullet, you don't stick with anything long enough for it to really become an effective coping tool for you. So don't judge it by how it feels the first 2, 3, 4 weeks and think, oh, that was a drop in the bucket. That barely did anything. I'm gonna try to find something that works better than this. The time frames are much longer than that. You got to stick with things really for a while, a few months at least, to really evaluate how they affect you. Now, it is true that there are certain coping tools that work more or less effectively for different people. So I'm not saying there's no individual variation. You might come across 1 or 2 things that they just don't click with you, and that's okay. But make sure you give it a fair shot before you conclude that. Because if you don't stick with anything long enough for it to become something that you like and that you're good at, then you're never going to find that thing you're looking for. And you're going to keep switching and keep looking for the rest of your life, and it's never going to change. So those are the 4 things that I remind myself of to help me stay patient. I really, really believe that patience is a key factor in mental health recovery. Again, I don't like that is true, but I know that it is true. And so I hope that this information I've provided you with today is worth integrating into your journey. If it is, please let me know. I'd love to see you again. Take care. See you soon.